And she knew that we wanted to shoot these projects in the Eastern Cape and had always wanted to bring something there. And she knew about this incredible location, which I didn't know about. So we did that incredibly naughty thing you're never supposed to do, where you write a script for a location you don't know you can get. Which was actually really dumb, but we got really lucky, and Eastern Cape Tourism Board were amazing.
Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Our Pass. I have kind of a strange setup today, but that's because I'm excited to talk to Kelsey Egan, the co-writer and director of Glasshouse, which came to digital and on demand on July 12th, 2022. We're going to talk to her right now. And while you're watching, if you could like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Helps me out a lot. Thank you. So thanks so much for joining me. This is Kelsey Egan, the co-writer and director of Glasshouse, which came to digital and on demand on July 12th, 2022. It is a mysterious indie film that has just a wonderful, like, kind of surreal story, an amazing setting, and also it has a lot better production values than I think I expected for most indie films. It looks like a film that's punching above its weight. I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So, you know, if people haven't seen the film, and they probably should have seen the film at this point, like, this is an inspiration from the movie. The movie has this just wonderful, wonderful style. It has like I call it like a post-apocalyptic puritanical style, just because you get this like otherworldly kind of end of the world view, but then they have these wonderful kind of classic outfits to make the setting just feel so different. So I guess, you know, the first question is, you know, what was the inspiration for this film? You are a co-writer of it. I'm not sure like how involved you were in the initial writing of it, or if, you know, maybe you collaborated with someone else that came up with the shell, but, you know, what was the inspiration for the story?
I wrote the film with Lungiswa. She's my work wife. She's a dear friend and exceptionally talented writer and creative. And I'd wanted to do a script with her, write a script with her for years since we met. And we basically both came out of 2019 in a rather apocalyptic state ourselves. We were in very dystopian moods. I'd had a feature project that for a script I'd wrote 9 years ago that I thought I was going to be able to, that we packaged and that we were going into production in 2019. And then at the last moment, a piece of the financing fell away. So I was pretty devastated about that. You know, the joys of indie filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And she had a show that was pulled from broadcast at the last minute for internal reshuffling stuff. And so we were both like really not in a good mood moving into 2020. But you know how it is, you just like pick yourself back up, and we knew we had the opportunity to pitch some grounded sci-fi concepts to Showmax, and we got together and started bouncing ideas around. And Glasshouse was one of the ideas of all the concepts that we pitched to them. We pitched about 8, and we expected them to, we were hoping they'd just greenlight one that we could earn some money writing together while we tried to like pick up the pieces of our lives and repackage our other projects. But we ended up coming up with about 8 concepts, and about 1 week before South Africa's longest official lockdown, they came back to us greenlighting a slate of 3 films.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, no, it was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like, I mean that sincerely, because if that hadn't happened, I would have been, lockdown would have been agonizing. And as it was, I spent like, you know, like it was a couple months on my balcony writing these feature scripts with Emma, and working with our producer, Greg Buckle, who's wonderful, and our co-writer on one of the projects, Fred Stridham. Anyway, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me answer your actual question. So what was interesting about Glasshouse is it was the concept that was initially the most bare bones of all of them that greenlit, but it came from a number of conversations between Emma and I. There was the initial concept of an intruder intruding on this glass house, and that was inspired from, to a degree, quite a bit, from Emma's childhood in the Eastern Cape, because she used to visit Pearce Conservatory as a child. And she knew that we wanted to shoot these projects in the Eastern Cape, and had always wanted to bring something there. And she knew about this incredible location, which I didn't know about. So we did that incredibly naughty thing you're never supposed to do, where you write a script for a location you don't know you can get. Which was actually really dumb, but we got really lucky, and Eastern Cape Tourism Board were amazing and super supportive, and Emma did a lot of legwork to make sure that happened. And you know, it was really wonderful for her to bring that project home, you know. But the I would say at the core root or heart of the plot and the themes or the way in which we explore relationships and our relationship with memory and how much memory informs identity and our interpersonal relationships and the choices that we make in our day-to-day lives in the present. That was informed, it's actually quite personal for both Emma and I. She has a close family member who suffered from dementia. I've had a close family member who suffered from short-term memory loss quite severely. And we both witnessed the impact that has not only on them and their awareness of what they're losing, but also on loved ones and close family members. And that was, I mean, that was a lot. And also, I think we were having conversations around trauma. And, you know, I think in Western society, we have all these like catchphrases, like, you know, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And whatever, you know, you go through hardship, it just makes you tougher. And it's a good thing. But it's just not true, you know, like every really shitty thing I've experienced or I've had my friends go through, like it doesn't, you don't bounce back, like it keeps affecting you, you know. And I think we were really interested in exploring how two very different personalities would approach trauma. And, you know, Evie, who I related to a lot, and I think a lot of people relate to initially, and feeling like you have to hold on to everything. Because at least, like, you know, it might be painful and it might be difficult, but at least then you can maintain a sense of who you are and not repeat past mistakes. Mm-hmm. Whereas B has the absolute opposite approach of like, some things are too heavy to bear, rather run away as fast as you can or erase those things to enable you to enjoy life and meet the world in an open way and still find and still be happy, right? I think we were, thematically, personally, that was what was most interesting to me, to explore that dichotomy between the two of them.
Yeah, and that was a really fun, might not be the right word, but very interesting kind of dynamic that you have between those two approaches, and kind of how their approaches to life and approaches to memory change their interactions with, you know, the stranger and other members of their household. And so I can see why that would be the most interesting part for you, because that was definitely kind of an enjoyable kind of duality to have in this film.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that it resonated, and we've been really, really grateful, because we didn't know if audiences would really respond to what we were trying to do, or if the ideas would be as interesting to other people as they were to us, or hit as close to home, or you know, resonate as strongly as they did with us. And it's been, I have to say, like some of the interviews have been like chilling or like really just moving, because, you know, like we've gotten some reviews where like critics are just like going so deep in ways that we had discussed when we were writing. We didn't know if anyone else was going to get it or care, you know, and that meant a lot.
Well, I think maybe a lot of people now have an exposure to things that maybe they'd want to forget. These last few years have been rough, and I don't know if it's going to get much better. I guess we'll find out. But at least I'm ready. I'm prepared for.
I know you're looking great.
I'm just trying to get a role in Glasshouse 2. Like, I'm just trying to, like,
I have to say, you've done an incredible job.
Oh, thank you.
I'm inspired.
This won't really keep out much air, but you know, at least I'll look the part. You know, maybe I'll be. Yeah.
You're going above and beyond, because I having experience putting my actresses through those, and Gabe, it was a lot. Yeah. They were real troopers.
And also, one of the themes I was wondering about is, you know, this is a very kind of like, it's an interesting duality between like it's a matriarchal society, but the, you know, outfits that you chose are more of like kind of, I don't know, like a Handmaid's Tale kind of look for them. Was that, I assume that was by choice? Is that kind of something you were trying to explore?
Oh gosh, it was very much a choice. And even in the writing stage, it would just, I don't know, there was just no question in my mind that they were going to be in these billowy white, you know, shifts. Mm-hmm. And part of it was just practicality. Like if I was living in a really humid glass house with my family and had no sense of taboo or modesty, because why would, you know, it's like you create your own worlds or your own rules, societies, and telling you what is or is not appropriate. I'd want to be in the most comfortable, loose fitting, you know, freeing thing possible. It's just like, what's practical in that space. But also I really, you know, in a lot of ways, this film is sort of a subtle, or maybe sometimes not so subtle, allegory for colonialism, and, you know, of painting an idyllic picture of, you like they're living this, they have this facade of this glass house of this like idyllic life, the sanctuary where they are protected from all of the bad, right? All of the bad with a capital B. And that's all well and good. And they embrace it for the most part, but there's a price that is paid for that. And, there's rot coming up underneath, there's blood on their hands. And, they create this sort of perfect picture of like, oh, we're living the ideal life and the way we're doing it is the right way. But I mean, that's just their opinion. That's just them putting it on other people.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved, that another duality in this where you've got this kind of idyllic oasis type location and some really terrible things happen. And it's like, it's just kind of natural survival for these folks. There's a scene at the start where I think you kind of like set the stage on like what they have to do to survive that, would probably horrify most people if, this was a real life situation. But for them, it's just kind of like their day to day. This is how they survive. Yeah. Like, well, we need some food for the crops. So, yeah, exactly.
And these are the rules that keep us safe. And who are we to question them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Until they are questioned, and then everything's a shit show.
Sounds like maybe that has parallels to society in general. So.
Yeah, I would say.
And you mentioned the location, like you hadn't been there before. It sounds like they were very receptive to this overall filming. Like I loved the location. I thought it looked perfect, but also had, like you said, a certain amount of rot in it. It had a certain like worn quality, even though this was this kind of beautiful building, in the middle of this lush field. What was it like to go there? And also, what did you do to establish this place? Or was it already kind of just, did it already look kind of like this? Because
no, good question. No, we did a fair bit. I mean, our art department, we're, production designer, Kerry van Lindenfeld, he's a mastermind and he's phenomenally good at what he does. But we had the perfect skeleton because the Glasshouse has been perfectly preserved, and it is a real Victorian greenhouse that was imported from London. It was one of 3 that were gifted from the UK like 100 years ago, and it's the only surviving one. And the Port Elizabeth or Tolbera have restored it, and it's available. It's open to the public to come view. And actually, what I discovered when I went on the first scout, which I hadn't realized from the photos, is they actually have it fenced in now to protect it from vandalism. And to keep it safe as a location, because it's very popular for wedding photography and birthdays and events, and because it's a lovely, lovely space. And we got permission to take down the fences for our shoot. But I think the most special thing about it, because like the park, St. George's Park, I mean, it is a magical park. I mean, the flora there, it's like you kind of feel like almost like you're stepping back into Jurassic. There's some random stuff there that you're like, how is this growing? Like I've never seen a tree that looks like this before. Like it's a really cool place. And we had written the whole script with the Glasshouse in mind, and we'd written the tree and the blind in the tree, but we had no idea if that tree existed. Like that was just something we're like, well, let's just hope there's a tree that is climbable. And when I got there and I scouted for the first time and found the epic tree that is literally just like 25 meters, 30 meters from the greenhouse in real life with, capital IRL, I was like, holy shit. Like we could not have gotten more lucky that this is all here. Yeah. And so the skeleton was like, could not have been more perfect. And what we did is we did some pretty serious dressing to the inside of the Glasshouse. We did some changes. We got permission to do some stuff just to dress it and break it down the way we needed to for the story. But then as part of our location deal, like any flowers or plants that we bought remained with them. So we were essentially restoring with additional greenery inside the greenhouse. And we also committed to repairing the fountain they had that wasn't in working order. So we had a very nice altruistic exchange for the use of the location in addition to the fee. And the Eastern Board or the Eastern Cape Board of Tourism were just so, they were so supportive because it was so great to have a movie shooting there. And the other thing that was wonderful is that AFTA PE, which is AFTA is one of the biggest film schools in South Africa, and they have campuses in Johannesburg and Cape Town and Port Elizabeth. but we had immense support from AFTA. So we ended up having quite a few AFTA students become like full-time members of our crew. And they were fantastic, and our HODs were mentoring them. And it was just a really cool sort of integration with the local community of creatives, and then our crew that got brought in.
That's awesome. Like that seems like an ideal. I assume this was a pandemic shoot.
Yeah.
This seems like an ideal way to kind of
Totally
use your pandemic time. Like
yeah, and it was completely bubbled. Like it was also quite unnerving because we had just gotten out of our main lockdown. So this shoot was like the first time we'd been like around people again. So everyone was like so grateful to be working and have something to do. But when we flew to PE, just before we started, we were ready for a shoot because we did a fair bit of our prep still in Cape Town. And when we got there, like I think like a week later, it was declared a hotspot for COVID.
Oh wow.
So we were terrified that someone would get sick and that we'd have to like just stop. And so we were so tightly bubbled, shooting in this very claustrophobic, intimate space, telling a very claustrophobic, intimate story. So it was really turned into like a life imitates art sort of feeling, meta feeling, and was quite surreal at times. But I think that also it was really special because we were just family for that period. Didn't see anyone else.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm glad that nothing happened because, for a film that relies so much on the foliage and the kind of surrounding area, right? If you change the season even by like a few months, it's going to look completely different. So that's
yeah. No, we had to get the film done then. Yeah.
And you mentioned the tree that happened to be there. Did your co-writer know about the tree, or did you just literally think like there must be a tree? We're going to write that.
We just wrote it. we just wrote it. We did not know if there were a tree. We had looked at some photos. Like, do you think there's a tree there? That looks like it could be a tree big enough. We had no idea. It was so lucky. We knew there were trees. We knew there was a forested area surrounding it, but we had no idea if there was a tree big enough or solid enough to be safe to climb, much less build like a hide in.
I mean, you keep saying that you got so lucky, but maybe this is just all very, very intense skill that you have, like skill to write the cover sheet, skill to visualize this place.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Go with that. I like that theory.
And so the setting I loved. The other thing, there's a lot that I love about this film, but the cast was just so phenomenal. Had you worked with any of them before? How did you kind of go about gathering these characters? Because they had some very interesting kind of nuanced roles that they had to play.
Yeah, I love this cast and we got really lucky.
Again,
most of them I know. Okay, we didn't get lucky. We just cast it really fucking well. We cast the right people for those. Well, no, because South Africa is a sort of a bit of a community in the industry. If you work here long enough, you do sort of eventually know most of the agents and know a lot of the other talent that's around. And we very, very easily could have just done direct requests for specific people for the parts. And we made the call. We did most of the casting ourselves, and we made the call that we were going to do an open brief to every agent, to everyone in the country, to get as many tapes as possible. And then because everyone had just been sitting at home during lockdown and no one was working, we were slammed. We had like over 120 tapes for B and Evie, and pretty much every character was like in the over 100. And Emma and I were like, oh, and it was hysterical. I mean, we were super excited, but we watched every single tape. Most of them we watched together. And it actually ended up being really challenging because we got so many amazing auditions, and it was all these people that were exceptionally talented in their own right. And, you'd end up just getting sad that you don't have parts for everyone. But on the plus side of that, of seeing so many different varied takes on the role and different approaches and different types of people and characters, when we did get the tapes that were right, it was an instant like, oh, this is Evie. It was like we got Anja's tape, and there was like no question in my mind from the first moment I watched this tape. And it was phenomenal. And it like real tears, 100% in the character. Like she felt this girl to her soul, and it was evident from the very first tape she submitted. And similar with Jess for B, she just understood B. We always describe B's mind as like a butterfly flitting about, and trying to capture that is not that easy. And Jess from her first tape had that dynamic range in terms of how spacey B can be, and then so how focused. So I say we got lucky, but we opened the doors to receive everything that was there and got, I think the best possible options. And we're very grateful to have worked with such a great team and such a strong ensemble. I mean, and Adrienne Pearce is just a force. I mean, she's been, incredibly affluent in her theater career and also her screen career. And yeah, it was just a really great group of people. I want to mention every one of them by name because they all deserve it. Like Hilton's incredible. Gabe is an empath and channels. I mean, he's just exceptional. Kitty is like, I want to call her a raw talent because she's so young, but she's also incredibly experienced. She played Matilda on a theatrical run, like overseas, so it's like they're a very talented bunch.
Yeah, no, they were all phenomenal. I love that you kind of like, you open the doors, you open the floodgates. It sounds like you just got like a flood of things, and then you had to pick out these like beautiful fish from this like river flowing past you.
Yeah, but that's what made it hard because it's like there was a lot of beautiful fish.
Yeah.
And so it was like there was a lot of beautiful fish we had to say no to, which was really challenging. But it was like the right fish. Like it was very clear. They popped. The only person I worked with that I knew of was Jess because she was actually attached to another project of mine. And I did ask her to about the role, but she taped just like everyone else. And it was like that was very cool that it was like she was part of she came into it on equal footing with everyone else, even though she was the only international. And I credit her very highly for that. She's such a team player.
That's awesome. And also now you have a ton of tapes for Glasshouse 2 where you can make, nuanced other characters. So.
No, it's true. That was actually really a wonderful side, perk that came out of it. It was like very daunting watching so many tapes at the time, or not daunting, just time consuming. It was just like, oh my God, we don't have the time and we have, just not sleeping, watching tapes. But because you feel like people put so much effort into tapes, you want to give them the time, to like at least watch the effort they put in. But no, it worked out well.
For sure. And I like that you brought up Kitty because I loved Kitty in this film. Like, but what was it like working with her? Because she's so talented, but she is still a kid, and this is dealing with some topics that are tough.
Easy. She's easier than adults. No, seriously, she's wonderful. She's exceptionally nuanced, so natural, takes direction beautifully. And you can really just let her run. You can really let her fly. She's a pleasure. She's a very talented person.
That is fantastic to hear. It sounds like everything about this film kind of went well. Like it feels like this could have been a disaster in so many ways. Oh.
No, it could have been a disaster. Look, it was very stressful. We only had 4 weeks to shoot it. Our schedule was incredibly tight. We were shooting in a glass house, so reflections were always a problem. Oh, yeah. Our cinematographer was like a mastermind, and he'd light so carefully, and then we'd be framing up a shot, and I'd be like, Justice, I see a reflection, and you'd be like, fuck, because it was really, really hard. And I had a really specific lighting treatment I wanted, and a lot of it was like we wanted everything practically motivated, and he really delivered. But yeah, it was I'm really excited because we just had the SAFTA nominations, which is the South African Film and Television Awards, announced yesterday, and most of my HODs got nominations for best in their field, and I'm so happy because they all deserve it so much. And this shoot was, we did not have a lot of resources. It was not easy for anyone to deliver because they were doing things on much less than they're used to having. Mm-hmm. And everyone really came to the party, and I'm really, really grateful because it shows.
For sure. And 2 things about that. One is aware of glasses. I completely understand because I always have to watch my angles to make sure there's no reflection or the ring light. So yeah, that I can't imagine if my room was glass, that would just be terrible.
Yeah.
And then also, yeah, I agree. This film, I see a lot of indie films, and sometimes a film will come around and you're like, this feels just very natural. Sometimes indie films have a certain amount of I don't know, they feel
it feels like an indie.
It feels budget. Yeah, this one, there was nothing about it felt budget. It felt like a really tight, strong film that had a great setting, and nothing. There were no corners cut because of that. So
that's my favorite thing that you just said on the interview. That means I did my job right.
For sure.
But also the producers, we knew what we were up against, and you just box clever, you box smart. you figure out how to mask what you don't have, and you write and direct and, you know, produce accordingly. And yeah, I'm really proud of what we were able to do. We knew we didn't have the money. We knew it was a very ambitious thing that we were trying to do, but we also knew we could do it. We knew what we had at our disposal. And yeah, I'm just really grateful I got a chance to show what we're capable of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you know, the awards recognize that as well, or at least the award nominations. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but yeah.
So one thing I was wondering, the stained glass, you know, where did that come from? Was it drawings? Was it kind of imposed? How did you create those? Because those are iconic. They weren't in a lot. But
they were designed in Photoshop and Illustrator, and then they were printed. And they were treated to look like watercolor or painted on, but it was designed, and then big prints were put up, and it was very stressful, like putting up the prints and to not rip them or mess them up. But we had our production designer Carrie had some lovely designers that he had commissioned for some initial work, and then I have to give a massive shout out to Charles Tate, who is a man of many talents, who is the head of cinematography at AFTA. And he actually came in and finished a large chunk of the design, and sort of like, you know, the artists that Carrie had organized sort of passed on the torch for a number of outstanding things that Charles just smashed out of the park on his own. And it was a part of like the collaboration, you know, wanting to work and collaborate with the talent in PE as well as what was happening in Cape Town. And yeah, Charles is an integral part of this process. He's helped out in so many ways. He was also sort of manning the unit with overseeing the AFTA students' contributions and everything they did. So yeah, very grateful to him.
Sounds like an essential part of this film. And another question I had is, I loved the music. I thought the music was just beautiful and kind of had this haunting, dreamlike nature. It kind of felt a lot like another one of my favorite kind of sci-fi films, The Fountain. Like the music reminded me a lot of that. You know, who did that, and you know, did you give them any direction, or was it just like, hey, we need this to feel, you know, beautiful and otherworldly, like go?
That's a great question. So music to me is always like, I mean, anyone would say this, but it's like so pivotally important. Like it's so crucial, to the point that like I want to spend as much time on focus on it as I spend on any other area of my process as director. And I think sometimes it's frustrating that I don't have more time to spend on it, but I generally am quite involved. So what I do, or my process or way of working, is I do a Spotify playlist of all of the tracks that resonate or feel right for the film from a mood or atmosphere point of view. And then I share that great playlist with my composer, who is, I am convinced, going to be the next James Horner. His name is Patrick Connell. You can look him up online. He is a prodigy. He is like exceptional in every way. And I love our working relationship because we basically, so I do this Spotify playlist, I send it to him, he listens to it. Then we have like quite a few creative calls, just talking about like what I'm envisioning, what I'm looking at, but also like what his thoughts were and what his ideas are. And generally they're very well aligned, or we sort of build on them and sort of share tracks back and forth, and then have like a sort of a shared language for what we're trying to achieve. And then he runs with it. But by that point, we already have such a shared vision for what we're aiming for in the sound of the film, that it's like he comes back and like he just nails it. You know, like it's not like this massive back and forth process, because we've already created the sort of the bedrock of what the feelings to be evoked need to be and what the sound needs to be. And then he just makes miracles. And he does. He writes, he scores, he produces.
That sounds
he
ideal.
Does all of the things. Yeah.
That sounds
amazing.
amazing.
And he organized some incredibly talented musicians as well, live strings for the score, which I'm very grateful to him for too.
That sounds like an ideal collaborator, right? Like
he's a keeper.
That is awesome. So I know we have a limited time, and I know that you have been very busy. So I'm going to switch. I call it the lightning round. They're just lightweight questions about the film. I want to see how your personal experiences map to things on the film. You can feel free not to answer any of them. I will not be offended, but I try to keep them very answerable.
Okay.
The first question is, have you ever had a greenhouse?
No.
I
wish I had, but no.
Have you ever grown your own food?
Yeah,
There you go.
with minimal, well, with I'm good at growing herbs and really good. Like the tomatoes really love to just grow. They're very good. They're very behaved, which I like. Well, no, they're not behaved. They just run with it, which I like because I am terrible at like paying attention.
Mhm.
Because I'll be like super attentive for like a day and then get super busy for a week and be like, oh my God, I didn't take care of the babies. And if the babies need taking care of, the babies are not okay anymore. But the tomatoes are always fine, which is great. But am I like a proper homesteader or a very admirable gardener? No. Would I like to be? Yes. But that isn't, I'm not at that point in my life yet.
Well, it also sounds like you at least have the skills needed for when the world like ends and we need to kind of go into.
One would like to fantasize that, but I think probably don't. I did do some like Game Ranger guide course stuff when I was in my early 20s, which I liked very much.
I would trust you if if I need to to go flee, I'll flee to South Africa and meet you at the greenhouse.
Yeah, it's a good spot to hide away in during the apocalypse.
There you go. Is there a memory? You don't have to say which one, but is there a memory that you would choose to forget?
Probably.
Yeah. So, but you said you were more on the Evie side, not the B side. So,
I think everyone starts on the Evie side until they have certain things happen.
That is a very appropriate answer, and also a nice kind of analogy for the movie itself. And I can't imagine that this is possible, but do you consider yourself a forgetful person? It sounds like you have so much going on, you have to remember everything, but do you ever consider yourself a forgetful person?
I'll be honest, I used to be amazing. I used to be very, very sharp and always keep track of all of the things and all the balls. And then there was a period in 2015 where some stuff happened that hit me really hard. Mm-hmm. And from that moment onwards, I lost that gift.
It also could just be like, I find that the more stuff I have on my plate, it's just tougher to kind of keep everything in balance because there's only so much of your time.
Being like very busy, like look, sleep deprivation is obviously terrible. That like definitely fucks with your short-term memory. It's proven. So I can tell that I am worse when I'm not getting enough sleep. But no, there was definitely a shift at some point in response to experiences. And I mean, I find it fascinating. I studied neuroscience and behavior, so I did some reading on it. And apparently there's a link between memory and certain like traumatic experiences. Like if you go through trauma, it impacts your memory and makes it you work. And it actually makes it harder for you to remember things. I don't know. It's weird, but it's interesting.
It almost sounds like a defense mechanism for your brain, like trying to limit.
Yeah, but it's not like helpful. Like you don't forget the helpful things. Yeah. Like you remember the shit that sucks, and like you forget all the useful things, like that really amazing interview you were supposed to be having at 6 p.m. Like or like the perfect calendar in your brain, or like all the juggling balls that used to always be not a problem to keep track of at all. Start to be a bit harder.
Well, I mean, if that is your brain, you still make this great art, like by all means, forget a few things and make amazing films. I love it. Have you ever shot a rifle?
Yes, and I hit bullseyes. I'm good at it.
Again, I'm going to South Africa should this world end.
Fantastic.
Does your family have a matron like the mother, like a matronly head or anything like that?
We have a matriarch. Yeah, on both sides of my family, I would say. Yeah, very admirable.
Yeah, and you know what? A woman in charge is probably better for this world in general. So.
No comment.
Have you ever worn a bonnet?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also wore the bonnets that we had made, and I tried them on constantly, and was always and was making many tweaks, much to the chagrin of my poor production designer Carrie, who's like, yeah, it was a very tight schedule, and I wanted a very specific sharp curve in the shape of the bonnet, and it wasn't the easiest thing to do, and they did it, and I was very grateful.
Sounds perfect. Again, like another just fortuitous aspect of this film is like everything kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone by K?
Have I ever gone by K?
Yeah, just K, just the letter.
I think maybe one or two people have called me that, but not generally, no. I have other nicknames, but not that one.
Okay. Do you have any jewelry or clothing that has your name on it? Because I love those necklaces.
No, that I would never do that. That was very much a them thing. That I would never do that.
Perfect. And the last question is, the world is ending. Where do you go?
The forest.
The forest, all right. Makes sense. Protection, food, solitude.
Deep in the woods. I like forests.
There you go. All right. And so the film is Glasshouse. It's out. It came out on July 12, 2022 on digital and on demand. So anyone can check it out. They can check it out from their comfort of your own homes. You don't have to go outside. You can stay inside, which feels perfect for this film. You are out promoting the movie and you're clearly working on other things. After people check out Glasshouse, what can they see next from you? What can they expect from you?
I'm in post-production on the film that didn't get shot in 2019. We ended up shooting it at the end of 2021, and I am currently very busy with VFX and ADR and I'm very excited that it is happening.
Excellent. I will look forward to this future unannounced film, but until then, people can check out Glasshouse. It is a treat. It is a very interesting film. It is a very mysterious film. You probably have to watch it twice. I had to really kind of fully get it, but it is.
You watched it twice?
Of course.
That's so nice of you.
Yeah. Well, I watch it once for the review, and then before the interview, I watch it to refresh my memory on things. So.
Oh, that's amazing. That's very cool.
It's awesome. This is Kelsey Egan, the co-writer and director of that film. Definitely check it out, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys.
That was Kelsey Egan, the co-writer and director of Glasshouse, which came to digital and on demand on July 12, 2022. It is an interesting, beautiful, twisting indie thriller about kind of a post-apocalyptic world and what a group of people do to survive. It is a fascinating film, and it is a really, really impressive feat for an indie movie. So I definitely think you should check it out. If you like this interview, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.